I was standing in my kitchen early on a Friday morning, waiting for the coffee to finish brewing, when my phone buzzed on the counter. It was a work message, short, direct. "Don't come into the office today. We need to talk Monday." I read it once, then again. No explanation, no context, just that. I turned the phone face down and poured the coffee anyway. At the time, I had no idea that by Monday afternoon, a deal worth just under $5 billion would be gone, a company older than my parents would be unraveling, and someone half my age would be quietly realizing they had mistaken authority for understanding. But that part came later. I'd been with Redwood Advisory Group for 17 years. Same building, same badge, same early mornings. Our offices sat above downtown Denver, high enough that the city felt quieter up there. You could hear the HVAC hum, keyboards tapping, the occasional muted laugh drifting over the glass partitions. The place always smelled faintly of espresso and carpet cleaner. I liked it that way. My role was Senior Director of Acquisitions, which mostly meant I handled the deals that didn't fit neatly into spreadsheets. Family companies, founder-led firms, situations where trust mattered more than speed. One of those deals was Atlas Manufacturing, privately held, fourth generation, industrial equipment, specialty metals, some land assets out west that most analysts ignored. We'd been working toward an acquisition for almost a year and a half. Slow dinners, long phone calls, careful sequencing. The closing was scheduled for Monday morning. That Friday, I'd gone into the office anyway. I took the elevator up alone. The doors opened onto a floor that felt off. Too quiet. People were there, but conversation stopped when I passed. My assistant, Leah, looked up from her desk and didn't smile. That's when I saw her. Emily Hart. She'd joined Redwood 6 months earlier with a freshly minted MBA and a title that didn't exist before she arrived. Director of Strategic Innovation. Her mother sat on the executive committee. Everyone knew that, even if no one said it out loud. Emily was standing near the conference rooms, tablet tucked against her chest, posture rigid. She watched me approach like she was bracing herself. "Can we talk?" she asked. Her voice was steady, but her jaw was tight. I nodded and followed her into an empty conference room. Glass walls, neutral lighting, the faint squeak of chairs moving somewhere down the hall. She didn't sit. "I've reviewed your approach on the Atlas transaction," she said, "and there are concerns." I waited. She scrolled on her tablet, more for confidence than necessity. "Your process relies too heavily on personal relationships. It's not scalable. It doesn't align with where the firm is going." I leaned back slightly in the chair. Not defensive, just listening. She kept going. "We're moving toward standardized frameworks, centralized documentation, less dependence on individual discretion." I looked at the table, at my reflection in the glass, at the city beyond it. Atlas Manufacturing wasn't a framework deal. It never had been. But I didn't say that yet. Emily finally looked up. "For now," she said, "I need you to step back from direct contact with the Atlas principles, effective immediately." There it was. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet line spoken by someone who didn't yet understand what it touched. I nodded once. "Okay," I said. She seemed surprised by that, like she'd expected resistance. "We'll revisit Monday," she added, "after leadership alignment." I stood, straightened my jacket, and picked up my notebook. As I left the room, my phone vibrated again. This time, it was a missed call. From a private number I hadn't seen light up my screen in months. I didn't return it, not yet. I went back to my office, closed the door, and sat down. Then I waited. I stayed in my office longer than usual that morning, not working, just sitting. The building sounds settled into their normal rhythm again. Phones ringing softly, a printer cycling somewhere down the hall, someone laughing a little too loudly near the break room. From the outside, it probably looked like nothing had changed. My office was small but familiar, a window that caught the afternoon light, shelves lined with binders that no one ever opened unless something had already gone wrong. A framed photo of my father in a work jacket, taken sometime in the late 70s, leaning against a truck he was proud of. I didn't rush. Rushing makes people sloppy. The Atlas deal sat open on my desk in a thin leather folder, Not the official contract that lived in the firm's system, but my working notes, handwritten timelines, names, margins scribbled in the corners, small reminders that never made sense to anyone else. Atlas Manufacturing had been run by the Calder family since the 1940s. The founder started with one machine shop and a handshake loan from a local supplier. His grandson, Robert Calder, now ran operations. His daughter managed finance. His son handled land assets that barely appeared on their balance sheet. That part mattered. Redwood's analysts saw Atlas as a straightforward acquisition. Solid revenue, aging equipment, easy efficiencies. The models looked clean, but the models didn't show everything. They didn't show why Robert always insisted on meeting in person, why certain parcels of land in eastern Wyoming were marked as non-core but never discussed. Why the family insisted on keeping one subsidiary untouched for legacy reasons. Those details lived in conversations, in pauses, in the way people chose their words when they trusted you. That afternoon, Leah knocked lightly and stepped inside. "They're asking where you are," she said quietly. "Who's they?" "Legal, compliance, Emily." I nodded. "Tell them I'm tied up." She hesitated. They scheduled an internal call about Atlas for later today. "I won't be on it." She swallowed. "Okay." When she left, I opened the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside was a slim, worn notebook, brown leather, soft at the edges. I'd carried it for years. Never left it at work overnight. Never scanned it. Inside were phone numbers you couldn't look up, notes written in shorthand only I understood. A few pages dedicated to Atlas alone. I closed it and put it back. Around 4, my phone buzzed again. Same private number. This time, I answered. "Daniel," I said. "Robert Calder didn't waste time on greetings." "I heard you're not on the call," he said. "I'm not." A pause. Just long enough to mean something. "Is that a problem?" he asked. "For Monday," I said carefully. "It might be." Another pause. Longer. "I had someone else reach out," he said. "Young woman, very confident." I didn't respond. "She said you were stepping away," he continued. "Personal reasons." I leaned back in my chair and looked at the ceiling. "That's not accurate," I said. Silence on the line. Then a slow exhale. "All right," Daniel said. "I figured as much." We didn't discuss details. We didn't need to. He trusted patterns more than explanations. "Call me if things change," he said. "I will." After the call, I shut down my computer, logged out of everything, cleared what was mine to clear. At 5:30, Emily appeared at my door. 2 security officers stood a few steps behind her, hands folded, eyes avoiding mine. They looked uncomfortable. I recognized both of them. "Time to pack up," she said. Her voice was controlled, but her breathing wasn't. I nodded. "Give me a minute." She crossed her arms. "You have 30. I stood slowly and began placing personal items into a box. Not everything, just what mattered. Photo, notebook, a pen I liked. Emily watched in silence, clearly expecting something more. An argument, an apology, anything. I gave her none of it. When I was finished, I picked up the box and walked past her without a word. The elevator ride down was quiet. At the lobby doors, one of the security officers spoke softly. "Good luck," he said. Outside, the air felt lighter. I set the box in my car, sat for a moment, and didn't start the engine. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message, not from work, from Daniel Calder. "Call me Sunday night." I put the phone face down. Then I drove home. And for the first time in a long while, I let the weekend stay empty. I didn't think about Redwood on Saturday. That alone told me something had shifted. I spent the morning in my garage, hands blackened with grease, replacing a gasket on an old compressor I'd been meaning to fix for months. The radio played softly. Nothing urgent, nothing pulling at me. By the afternoon, the quiet felt intentional. Silence, when chosen, has structure. Sunday evening, just after 7, I washed my hands, dried them slowly, and picked up my phone. 32 missed calls, messages stacked on top of each other like paperwork after a fire. Leah, legal. An executive assistant I barely knew, then a name that mattered. Daniel Calder. I sat down before calling him back. "Evening," I said. "Evening," he replied. "I assume you've seen the chaos." "I've seen the notifications." He let out a short, humorless breath. "They don't know what they don't know." "No," I said. "They don't." Daniel didn't raise his voice. He never did. When people like him get upset, they don't sound angry. They sound precise. "They asked about the Wyoming subsidiary," he said. "Specifically why it isn't modeled correctly." I waited. "I told them it wasn't their concern," he continued. "That didn't go over well." "It wouldn't." He paused. "You still have your notes?" "Yes." Another pause. "Good." That was it. No requests, no pressure, just confirmation. After the call, I opened my safe. Inside were 3 things: personal documents, an old watch, and the notebook. I didn't open it yet. Instead, I laid it on the table and thought in steps. Step 1. I was no longer employed. That meant no obligation to interpret, soften, or translate. Step 2. Redwood only knew what existed inside their systems. Step 3. Atlas Manufacturing only moved forward if Daniel trusted the process. Silence fit neatly between those steps. At 9:14 p.m., an email came through from Redwood's general counsel. Carefully worded. Neutral subject line. An invitation to clarify recent developments. I didn't respond. 10 minutes later, another message, then a call. I let it ring. When the phone finally went quiet, I poured a glass of water and sat by the window. Denver at night is calmer than people expect. Fewer horns, more space between sounds. At 10:02 p.m., Daniel texted again. "Breakfast, tomorrow, 8 a.m., same place." "Understood," I replied. I put the phone face down. Monday morning I arrived early. The restaurant was nearly empty, white tablecloths, low voices, silverware placed with intention. Daniel was already there, reading the paper like the world wasn't about to tilt. "They didn't sleep," he said without looking up. "No," I agreed. "They wouldn't have." He folded the paper and finally met my eyes. "They told my attorney you were on medical leave." I nodded once. "That's new." "They also said you'd briefed your replacement fully." I didn't react. Daniel smiled faintly. "Interesting strategy." He reached into his briefcase and slid a thin folder across the table. "Not a merger agreement, an employment offer, senior operating partner, equity participation, authority defined in plain language, no ambiguity." "I want you on my side of the table," he said. "However this plays out." I didn't touch the folder yet. "They rescheduled the meeting," he added, "this afternoon. They asked me to give them one last opportunity to resolve misunderstandings." I looked at the window, at the quiet street beyond it. "Do you want to go?" I asked. Daniel smiled again, this one sharper. "I want to watch them explain a system that never included the most important parts." I finally opened the folder, read it carefully. Once. Then I closed it. "All right," I said, "but we don't raise our voices." "Of course not," he replied. "That would suggest uncertainty." We finished breakfast without rushing. When we stood, Daniel adjusted his jacket and said, almost casually, "By the way, I never canceled the deal." I nodded. Some leverage works best when it stays invisible. We walked out together into the morning light. And somewhere across town, people who thought they were in control were just beginning to realize they were waiting on a door they no longer had the key to. We didn't go straight to the building. That was deliberate. Daniel and I sat in the car across the street from Redwood's headquarters for a few minutes, engine off, windows cracked. The lobby doors slid open and closed as people hurried in with coffee cups and phones pressed to their ears. Urgency was starting to leak through the glass. "I want to be clear," Daniel said calmly. "I'm not interested in saving face for anyone." "I know. And I don't want theatrics." "You won't get any." He nodded once. That was enough. Before we stepped out, I did one more thing. I opened my phone and sent a single message to Leah. "Don't warn anyone." She responded almost immediately. "Okay." That was step 4, though no one else would ever label it that way. Inside the building, the air felt tighter than it had on Friday. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. A few people looked at Daniel, then at me, then quickly looked away. Emily was near the elevators with two attorneys and her mother. Her posture was rigid. Her smile didn't quite arrive on time. She didn't say my name. "Mr. Calder," she said, stepping forward. "Thank you for coming back in." Daniel shook her hand politely. "I was invited," he said. "That's different." The attorneys exchanged a glance. We were guided into a smaller conference room this time. No windows, just a long table, water glasses untouched, a screen already glowing with slides. Emily took the head seat. I sat beside Daniel. That, I noticed, was when her breathing changed. She started talking immediately. Process updates, risk mitigation, revised timelines. She spoke quickly, like momentum itself might substitute for clarity. I listened. She reached the slide labeled Asset Rationalization. Wyoming appeared in a small box on the right side. Daniel tilted his head slightly. "Before we go further," he said, "I'd like to understand your interpretation of the Wyoming subsidiary." Emily nodded, relieved to be on familiar ground. "Our analysis shows it as non-performing," she said. "Minimal revenue, ongoing environmental exposure. From an optimization standpoint—" "Pause," Daniel said gently. The room went still. "Who authorized that interpretation?" he asked. Emily glanced at the legal team. "It's based on the digital materials provided by Redwood." Daniel turned to me. I didn't speak. "That's what I thought," he said. He opened his briefcase and placed a single sheet of paper on the table. Not a contract, not a spreadsheet, a handwritten note. Dates, initials, a location. Emily leaned forward slightly, confused. "What is that?" she asked. Daniel didn't answer her. "Do you recognize this?" he asked me. "Yes." "Explain it." I did, calmly, slowly, without emphasis. The subsidiary wasn't operational by design. It held extraction rights tied to a land trust. The rights matured on a separate timeline. Any attempt to dissolve or divest the entity would void protections the Calder family had maintained for decades. The room stayed quiet. One of the attorneys began flipping through documents, faster, then slower. "That understanding isn't reflected in the materials we received," he said carefully. "It wouldn't be," I replied. "It was never meant to be." Emily's voice tightened. "Why wouldn't something that material be documented?" I looked at her for the first time since Friday. "Because it wasn't Redwood's asset," I said. "It was Atlas's condition." Daniel folded his hands. "And it was discussed only with someone we trusted to understand the difference." No one spoke. Finally, Emily cleared her throat. "We can incorporate this," she said. "Amend the structure." Daniel shook his head. "You can't incorporate trust after the fact." Her mother leaned forward. "Let's take a breath," she said. "There's been a misunderstanding." Daniel stood. "There has," he agreed. "But not the kind you fix with language." He turned to me. "Are we done here?" I nodded. As we left the room, I heard someone behind us whisper, "Did we just lose this?" In the hallway, Daniel stopped walking. "Next step," he said quietly. "We define reality." I checked my watch. "Then we wait," I said. And for the second time in 3 days, silence did exactly what it was supposed to do. We didn't leave the building right away. Daniel and I sat in a small waiting area just off the lobby. Leather chairs, neutral art. A tray of untouched pastries meant for meetings that never quite went as planned. No one asked us to stay. No one asked us to leave. That told me everything. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. People moved differently now. Faster, less eye contact. Phones held lower, voices quieter. Whatever confidence had been circulating that morning was gone. Finally, the general counsel approached. He looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with the hour. "Mr. Calder," he said carefully. "Could we reconvene? Just briefly." Daniel stood. "Of course." This time the conference room was larger. More people, fewer screens. Emily was already seated. Her tablet lay flat on the table, untouched. Her mother sat beside her, hands folded, face composed but tight around the eyes. No one offered me a seat. I took one anyway. The general counsel spoke first. "There appears to have been a breakdown in communication regarding roles and authority." Daniel nodded. That's an accurate description. We want to clarify, he continued, that Charles's departure was premature. Emily's head snapped up. I acted within my mandate, she said. His approach conflicted with... Daniel raised a hand, not sharply, just enough. Emily, he said, this isn't a debate. The word landed gently, but it landed. He turned to the room. I entered negotiations with Redwood on one condition, he said. That I would be dealing with someone who understood my company beyond its financials. He gestured toward me. That was him. Emily's voice rose despite herself. We have documentation, we have models, we can still execute. Daniel didn't look at her. You fired the only person authorized to speak for you, he said, then misrepresented his status to my legal team. Her mother shifted. That was an internal matter. No, Daniel replied. It became external the moment you lied about it. The room went quiet again. I finally spoke. For clarity, I said, I no longer represent Redwood Advisory Group in any capacity. The general counsel frowned. Charles, we're prepared to discuss reinstatement. I shook my head once. I'm not. Emily turned toward me. Her voice cracked slightly. You worked here for years, she said. You could have helped us fix this. I met her eyes. I did help, I said. For 17 years. No anger, no accusation, just fact. Daniel closed his folder. The Atlas transaction is withdrawn, he said. Effective immediately. A breath left the room all at once. Emily stood abruptly. You can't just walk away. Daniel looked at her then, calm, assessing. I already have, he said. As we left, no one followed. Outside, the sun had shifted. The morning rush was gone. The city felt settled again. Daniel exhaled slowly. That went about as expected, he said. I nodded. My phone buzzed. A message from Leah. They're in emergency session. HR is asking questions. A lot of them. I put the phone back in my pocket. Daniel opened his car door, then paused. Ready to move forward? He asked. Yes, I said. We drove away without urgency. Behind us, a building full of people was beginning to understand that authority doesn't come from titles and systems don't replace judgment. They just document the absence of it. The fallout didn't arrive all at once. It came in layers. By late afternoon, Daniel's legal team had formally notified Redwood that Atlas Manufacturing was no longer available for acquisition. No press release, no explanations, just a clean withdrawal, filed correctly, timed precisely. That night, my phone rang again. This time it was Redwood's managing partner. His voice was measured, too measured. We'd like to discuss terms, he said. Restoration, severance, non-compete flexibility. I listened without interrupting. When he finished, I said, I don't think that's necessary. A pause. You're walking away from a long career here, he said. I already did, I replied. The call ended politely. The next morning, Daniel and I signed the final pages of my new agreement. No ceremony, no photos, just signatures, dates, and a quiet understanding of what came next. Within a week, the story inside Redwood had changed tone. What started as a cultural alignment issue became a process failure. Then a governance review, then silence. Emily was placed on leave. Her title disappeared from the internal directory. Her authority quietly evaporated. By the end of the month, Redwood announced it was exploring strategic alternatives. Daniel sent me the message while I was organizing my new office. 12 cents on the dollar, he wrote. I set the phone down and finished arranging the shelves. Atlas Manufacturing moved forward with a different buyer 6 months later. Smaller firm, slower timeline, fewer slides. The Wyoming subsidiary stayed exactly where it was. No one argued about it. Sometimes resolution doesn't look like victory. It looks like alignment returning to the right hands. And once that happens, everything else follows naturally. I locked my office that evening, stepped into the quiet hallway, and turned off the lights. Order had a sound to it. It was very quiet. A few months later, my mornings looked different. No alarms tied to earnings calls, no inbox full of urgency disguised as importance. I woke up early anyway. Habit doesn't disappear just because pressure does. Most days started with the same routine: coffee, a short walk, 10 quiet minutes reviewing notes before anyone else needed me. The office at Atlas was smaller than Redwood's, but it felt steadier: fewer screens, more paper, conversations that ended with decisions instead of follow-ups. In the evenings, I cooked again, nothing elaborate, simple food, clean counters, windows open when the weather allowed. Order has weight, and when it's real, you can feel it settle. Every so often, someone would call me with a familiar story. A long-tenured manager sidelined by a new title. A deal optimized until it collapsed. A board confused about why trust didn't transfer with the data. I listened. Sometimes I gave advice. Sometimes I just told them to slow down and write things down by hand before they spoke. Not every situation needed intervention, but some did. One afternoon, while reorganizing a filing cabinet, I found an old note I'd written years earlier. Just a line to myself. Pay attention to who controls access, not who talks the most. I left it where it was. That evening, I sat on the back patio with a glass of water and watched the light fade. No calls, no meetings, just the sound of the city settling into itself. Peace doesn't announce itself. It shows up quietly, once everything unnecessary has been removed. If you stayed with me through this story, thanks for listening. If you found something familiar in it, you're probably not alone. Go ahead and like the video and subscribe if these kinds of stories resonate with you. Let me know in the comments what city you're watching from and what time it is right now. I always enjoy seeing how far these conversations travel. 2 more stories will be queued up next, ones that came from people who reached out after situations not so different from this. Until then, take care of your time. It's usually worth more than anyone admits.